Okay, so welcome to RubyGems on Steroid. So it's one of the latest addition of JFrog. Is basically the ability to manage now your RubyGems for inside the Artifactory, and so to automate the continuous integration and continuous delivery of your gems using Jenkins and Artifactory. This is what we're going to talk about right now. There is quite a good part about the Ruby community coming to look at the dark side of Java and seeing actually how continuous integration is done on this side, and the conflict and what we can learn from the Ruby guys and what the Ruby guys learn from the Java environment. Okay, this is me. Most of the slides are done by Jay Barrow, one of great JFrog developer advocate, and so he likes to make fun of me, but he's making some great slides. I really like. So what is JFrog? What is a frog? So this is JFrog last year. So there is a lot of frogs all over in my slides. We have two main products, Bintray, which is an OSS software platform, so to distribute binaries between the different players. So it's like a hub for all your binaries over the OSS environment. This is how now SBT plugin start to be distributed, and quite soon the Jenkins plugin also are going to be distributed. And Artifactory, which is our original product, which we're going to talk about here, which is a binary repository manager. So it's binary repository manager since 2006, and we are doing that for quite some time. But every time I talk to Ruby guys and I say I'm doing a binary repository manager, they look at me with a smirk face and say, "Yeah, I'm doing Ruby, I'm doing only sources, I don't need your binaries." And I mean, it's a true story, but very fast they keep asking us. I mean, that was one of the highest voted feature on the Artifactory open source and the Artifactory environment. Please make Artifactory manage the RubyGems. And so when we tell the Ruby guys, wait, maybe you can manage your software packages, which are sources, which are called RubyGems, on Artifactory, and then suddenly they start to like it. The conclusion of this, by the way, is that every time you do software, and in every software environment, you need packages. Okay? To go back to sources every time you want to depend on something, depend on a library. This used to be the C++ kind of way, because yeah, I know my GCC kind of optimization parameter that I can put on my specific Linux compilation or whatever. I need to go back to the sources and recompile my XML parser by myself. So basically those days are gone. Sorry for the one that likes it, but today you get a software pack that is already done, already ready to use, and even in Ruby you need to have software packages and you need to distribute software packages. So, and the other thing that the Ruby guys also really like is to deploy from sources. By the way, this is the way GitHub works. Okay, so I cannot say that it's completely useless. But at the end of the day, for most of us, deploying from sources and to say, this is the source code of whatever Git branch or whatever Git version is going to go to production, is a hell of a risk. Okay, and it's making really a lot of problem. It's really hard to manage like that. Okay, to do it when you do it normally what everybody else is doing, which is manage software pack and saying this is a pack that's going to go to production, is a lot easier to manage. The workflow is a lot more manageable. Okay. So even for Ruby guys, they understood that, and most of the time today, even if you play with Chef and Chef server, which is supposed to be also a recipe of source code, they do some pack and they do some block of code and they distribute to production using block of code. There is some great talk, by the way, about Ruby guys getting really annoyed about this mood that source code should go to production. And this is also what PHP is doing, and today they do PHP modules, and everybody basically at the end of the day is putting modules in production. So, a Sun guy, which is really kind of a strange move, asked if someone had an idea about making some kind of cpan, because they come from Perl, for Ruby. Okay. So out of that, basically, archive for Ruby module in RubyConf 2001, they launched RubyGems.org, and they started to pack their Ruby with the RubyGems. And it was immediately a huge, huge success. People can share their open source library, people can depend on it, and people can do some real work and stop re-getting the source code, modifying the source code locally just for themselves, so to share and to have a nice environment. So they say it frankly at the bottom, even if it was in small print, in what is RubyGems, but it's like a jar. Okay? If you say that to a Ruby guy, he'll shoot you. But at the end of the day, this is what they did. It's not bytecode, it's source code, but at the end of the day, it's a nice software package that can be loaded in a single file that is managed by the single file. You know where it comes from, you know the version, and it's managed. Yeah. So yeah, today it's true with the JRuby push and the fact that the JVM is one of the best places to execute Ruby code. I mean, the Ruby community stopped for quite some time now to shout at the dark side of the enterprise Java guys. But at the end, this is. So now we go back how Ruby guys are creating some gems. Basically how any one of us is creating a software package. You take some sources, so you have to write them. This part, by the way, when you go to Jenkins user conference, to DevOps conference, or to Artifactory, or to anything, everybody says, yeah, we take care of everything, we automate everything. You still have to write your source code. But once you have the sources, okay, that's the smallest part. You need to bring the dependencies. Okay, you need to take all the dependency, all the gem code, all the jar code. Where do you take them from? Okay, that's one big issue. Okay, it's kind of hidden in the Ruby platform, in the LVM platform. They try to make it really, really easy for you, but at the end of the day, there is some magic that is going on behind the scenes to bring you the dependencies. Once you have all the dependencies, by the way, it's meant also that no software today is built from scratch. Okay, you always need the dependencies. I don't know how many software beside drivers and event drivers they do for tests and all this kind of stuff. You always need to depend on something. Nobody is starting from scratch. So you build your binaries, whatever. So in Ruby it's nothing, it's just packing the sources. But still there is also sometimes some resources test and some resource repacking and versioning and things like that. And then what do you do? So basically, you have executable software of any kind. What do you do with it? Okay, so, I mean, you guessed it. Here we come. The binary repository manager. So, what it is, the binary repository manager, it basically answers the first question. It provides you everything that you need for bring your dependencies. Okay, this is what RubyGems.org is today as a magic hat below Ruby. When you run Ruby and you are depending on something, it takes it from RubyGems.org. Okay. So it's a really nice piece of website. I mean, it's really, really beautiful, but it has some issues. So I don't know if people are using Ruby. RubyGems.org, like Maven Central, like CPAN, like the Python eggs, like everywhere. Okay, it's a big central repository, and it has some issues. Okay, so Heroku, for example, so sometimes we are to blame, by the way. Heroku is also using our Artifactory Online, a cloud platform. So when we have issues, but here they had a lot of issue with RubyGems.org being basically corrupted and implemented. And so they started to block all access to RubyGems for quite some time until they managed to fix it. And it really generated a lot of hard time. Okay? So basically everybody wants to have their own RubyGems.org locally. Okay? You want to have your own Maven Central locally. You want to have your own whatever Python repository locally. And the JFrog, as being a generic binary repository manager, we started to aggregate all those communities, the Ruby community, the Python community, and all those guys. They said, we want our binaries inside our local binary repository manager. And they started to build basically some wrapper on top of Artifactory for RubyGems. Most of the time, we take those wrappers and we take those great open source contributions and we integrate into the product. And this is exactly what happened for RubyGems and Gems feature. So now the binary repository is the source of all your modules and the source of all your gems. Okay? So, before all your developer, by the way, this is one of the main issues also of all the Ruby environment and Ruby community, all the developers, they all go to RubyGems, they get different version at different time, and nothing is controlled. Okay, today basically you put the Artifactory server and you have the first proxy. That was the main first reason for Artifactory to exist. Okay, to have your own dependency from the external inside your own, so that you can manage them. Okay, as soon as you can see that you can manage your the gems from outside inside your internal binary repository manager, very, very fast, you get to the fourth step, and you start to put your own gems and your own deployment, and try to do continuous integration by module dependencies using your own binary repository manager. Okay? I just went from the talk downstairs from the robot guys that were doing all kind of robot and C++ and a lot of C environment. He's doing a huge file system dependency graph, and with Jenkins copying files from one place to another. It saves a lot of time by managing files and by doing file dependency between the Jenkins jobs. Okay? But having a real binary repository manager that knows how to do that, like a version control system knows how to do it for sources, is really, really helpful. Okay? So the binary repository is your now deployment target. So what people are doing today when they don't have version control, binary repository manager, how many of you are using a binary repository manager like Artifactory, Nexus, or Archive? Okay. So quite a good amount, but most of the people today, they still use their source control system, either Git, Subversion, or some kind of system of their own on top of a file system. Okay? So what's wrong with my source control system to put whatever I generate or whatever I depend upon inside my source control system? Okay? So there is a hint, the word source, has a meaning. So basically, a source file is not a binary file. Okay? And that's a big, big issue. To tell you, there is a lot of companies that try to use their source control system to modify their source control system to manage the binaries. Okay? It just doesn't work. Okay? The main reason is that there is so much differences between a source file and a binary file. Okay? It's like Sasha Laboreso, the founder of CloudBees. He used to say, I'm really happy that JFrog is taking care of all those dirty bytes. So that's really what's going on, is that people are really, really proud of their source code, of their text file, but at the end of the day, there is some people that need to take care of the 0 and 1 of those dirty bytes that need to go from place to place, and they are really, really different ways and different beasts. One is you can do diff, the other one, it's really, really hard to do diff. By the way, there is a Google project that tried to do some diff on binary files by doing checksum and repointing and all this kind of stuff. It didn't work for their automated system. In the source file, in the source control system, you version by content. You change the file, okay? When you do a binary, once you have a binary, what you want is a name. The name is way more important, the name of the file is way more important than actually its content. Okay, this is the metadata information about the name. This is the module my XML pool version 1.1.3, and it came from for Linux 64-bit. The name of the file is an important bit. In a version control system, the name of the file has to stay always the same. It's whatever .ruby, whatever .c, and all this kind of stuff. So you keep overriding the sources, and in binary, once you have a binary file that you keep using all over the place, you don't want to override. Okay? So if you want to use the one that is managing the left side, which are the text file, to manage your right side, it just doesn't know what to do. Okay? This is the big, big issue. Okay? So you modify text, you add stuff. You don't have the same way to manage binary file and to have. Okay? If you use Subversion, if you use Perforce, if you use Git, if you use whatever, even in Git, they are blocking. In GitHub, they keep blocking deployment of binaries inside the Git. Okay? And when you do all the cloning, you're spending a lot of the cloning time taking your binary and your third-party dependency. If you take a Git repo, you remove all the binary files that are inside your Git repo, and you keep only the text file and you make it clean, you will see the speed at which you can do Git clone and Git distribution compared to before. It's just freaking amazing. Okay? Git is meant to manage text file. It's amazingly good at doing it and at managing. Whenever you put a binary file inside it, it just is quite better than anyone else, but it's really, really not that good. Okay? So like I said, will stand up and say, no, no, wait, Git is really, really good at storing diff, and it doesn't store diff, it stores checksum, and it's quite good at doing all this stuff. I can tell you any kind of binary file, there is this delta and things, even the way it's doing the checksum mechanism, Git is not the good place to put your binary. Okay? So, the other thing is that Git is a distributed system, and you need a Git clone. Okay, this is one of the repos that we have on our public website. It's quite old. Okay, we have a repository of more than 3 million files. Okay, 5 terabytes. Okay, if you want to do Git clone, okay, you do Git clone, and next week you can start to work. Okay, so just Git is not meant to be a binary repository. Okay, the file server run your own gems. Well, if you want to have fun. Basically, the thing is that there is a lot of features that you want on top of this package manager, which you have inside Git, which you have inside Subversion, which you have inside Perforce, which you have inside a version control system. Okay, easy branching, easy REST API, full control, access control management, cleanup, auto cleanup, all this kind of stuff. So basically, there is a lot of people that do it by themselves. And you wrote your own binary repository manager. How many years it took you? And so I just want about Artifactory. So this is the Jenkins, Spring, Gradle, Grails. So we have a lot of open source projects. Okay, so Jenkins here, the repo, the jenkins-ci.org. It's on our cloud platform at JFrog. On the software as a service cloud platform of Artifactory, and this is where all the Jenkins plugins are built, all the Jenkins plugins are released, and this is the main source of all the Jenkins binaries and the Jenkins files that are exchanged between the Jenkins developers. Okay, so basically the Artifactory is mainly Java. So this is a nice slide made by Baruch for a Ruby developer for Ruby conference. So of course everybody says it's Java. So Java is very slow. Java is very complicated. So the main thing is that this is what the RubyGems guys said. It's like jars. They know that at least Java did dependency management correctly. It's true that, I mean, if you look at the Java code and Ruby code, it's not the same, but in terms of binary repository and binary dependencies, Java had it right since 2007. It's enterprisey. Well, we are young and kicking. This is just shameless plug. You can be a nice Java JVM environment, and with Groovy, Grails, Scala, all this kind of stuff, you can still do some really good stuff. Okay, so just, yeah. What came from Groovy to Java, what came from Java to Groovy, the jar, the Maven Central, and Artifactory. Okay, I'm just going to do a small demo. If I can get out of this. I think I can do that, yes. View. Full screen. Okay, so I just recorded a demo because, like you see, I'm a Java guy, so I did some Ruby here and after the RVM, and anyway, I recorded the demonstration of how to create basically a RubyGems first inside Artifactory. Okay, so you just create your own RubyGems repository inside Artifactory, which is a remote repository. So it's going to query all the information about the RubyGems, okay, index it inside Artifactory, and provide it to any kind of Ruby developer. Okay, so you just create a remote repo that points to the RubyGems. And you can create also a local repo which will contain your own gems. Okay, and here you just say in the packages that it will, that you want basically the automation of the gems indexer and the RubyGems indexer to index all the gems that are going to be deployed to this local repo. So Artifactory is going to take care of indexing. And the last part, which cannot exist in any other environment, is the Ruby virtual. It's this ability inside Artifactory to aggregate any amount of remote and any amount of local repository into a virtual repository, some kind of symlink, and Artifactory is going to aggregate the gem spec and the indexes of all those repositories into one single repo for your Ruby build client. Okay, so your build client has only one source, and you manage centrally the indexes from this source. So the other part is, of course, to use after Jenkins. And the part inside Jenkins, so here it's a freestyle job that will build a Ruby, a simple Ruby gem project using bundler and using a simple gem spec. Okay, when we do that, so here it's the Git repo, by the way, is public. Okay, it's a sample Git repo, Ruby example. Here it's under Shy backend, so we're going to put it under JFrog Dev because it's Shy here that developed this part. And so here at the end of the build, here it's just executing the builder, which will define all the dependencies and get all the dependencies, and the gem creation at the end here, which will create basically the Gemini gem, which was the demo here. Okay, so this can be executed immediately, and it will create a gem file on the local file system on the local job. Okay, so now what you want is you want to take this gem and put it inside Artifactory. So here we use the generic Artifactory integration. Okay, by the way, this part here, the generic Artifactory integration inside Jenkins, is a critical piece of the Artifactory plugin that is start to be used more and more, and we really, really wish that it will be used more often, because it's removing from your version control system, from even Maven, the distribution management inside Maven, inside Gradle, the publishing, and here inside gems, whatever system where you want to copy the gem at the end of the build. It's to manage inside your continuous integration flow where the artifacts at the end of a successful build are going to be distributed and are going to be copied too. Okay, so it makes at the level of the build master, of the build manager, of the branch creator. If you want to create a branch, you want to deploy it to another place, and all this kind of environment. A really nice way to separate where the different artifacts are going, depending of whatever quality, whatever job you are doing, and whatever environment you are. Okay? Because what happened today is that inside your version control system, you are configuring a lot of these URLs, where the artifact should come from, where the artifact should go to, which version, and all these kind of things inside your version control system. And so we see a lot of companies that keep changing again and again their version control system and re-pushing to Git or to whatever version control system, new version of metadata files, which should not be there in the first place. Okay? So they are generating a lot of builds and a lot of rebuilds, okay, for no real reason than just configuration reason and continuous integration and continuous deployment configuration reasons. Okay? So to put this part of the Artifactory plugin inside your system for any build environment, it's removing a lot of configuration for your version control system and really, really speeding up the system. The last part here at the bottom is some kind of DSL that we inherited, which allow you to do basically to say all the files that start with .gems or .gem, all the files that are under this dist folder, all the files that are whatever, put them inside Artifactory, okay, with regular expression and file name and stuff like that. So it's a generic deploy of the Artifactory, Jenkins Artifactory plugin. Okay, you can do the same, by the way, before for the resolution. Okay, before the build, you can ask this plugin to do a query to Artifactory based on properties, based on anything, to bring back any kind of files that you want locally on your build system. Okay, so this is the generic Jenkins integration, and here we're going to use it to deploy all the gems to the local repo. By the way, it's by combo box, so you cannot make a mistake. The GMS local repo where all the Ruby gems should be deployed to. Okay. And so here you have a lot of flexibility. You can put multiple lines. You can put as many parameters also on the deployment target and the deployment folder. And once you're going to execute this build, at the end of the build execution, once the build is fully executed, the tests are full, and everything is okay inside your Jenkins, then the file will be deployed to Artifactory with the information of where the file came from, which build number, which build name, so you have the full traceability this James was built by Jenkins, build number 1, inside whatever environment. Okay? And so now you have a link between any file that is inside your Artifactory server, any build that is inside Jenkins, and it's a bidirectional link with the Artifactory plugin. Okay? So now if you go to Artifactory, you can see inside the gem local that there is the gem that was deployed with a beautiful gem logo. And there is also inside the remote repo one of the rake dependencies that was needed to do this build. Okay, so he brought all the gems locally with the definition. And you have the link to the Artifactory build, and here you can browse inside Artifactory the different artifacts that were published by this specific build. Okay, here in the build info. For information, this build info, by the way, so here it's generated by the plugin. There is a Ruby project that manages this JSON, so that does an in-out of this JSON object. It's fully open source. The Java version that we provide is fully open source in Apache v2. There is also a Python guys that did an interface, but there is a Ruby implementation for accessing the REST API of Artifactory and creating this kind of JSON object. So you can do whatever you want here. Okay, the goal is basically to create bulk of artifacts together inside Artifactory that represent a build and represent a coherent set of results and dependencies inside Artifactory. Okay, so everything is by checksum, by the way, so you cannot cheat. In Gem, there is this ability sometimes to recreate the gem on the same place by changing the source code. Okay, and so here what we're going to do is that we're going to do a promotion of gems. Okay, so we're going to create inside Artifactory a release local for the gem, which is going to be another gem repo. Okay, and inside Jenkins, we're going to promote at the Artifactory level this specific build, which is going to copy the gem file from the staging local repo where it was to the release repo. Okay, one important thing about this promotion action here, which is done from Jenkins, is that we are using here the cheap copy of Artifactory. Okay, even if you have gigabyte and gigabyte of gem files, okay, what's going on here is just recreating the metadata. Okay, so you can do that 10 times a day. It's just creating new metadata inside Artifactory. So we don't have to copy the gigabyte of gem files when you do a copy from the local to the release, and do that multiple times and multiple level inside your promotion flow. Okay, that's one feature from the version control system. When you create a branch, we used to have CVS creating a branch. Okay, it's next week. Now we have Git, Subversion, and all this kind. It's an immediate branch. You have the same in Artifactory for binaries. Okay, when you copy binaries, when you change file names of binaries, when you move binaries around inside Artifactory, it's a metadata database operation. Okay, there is no moving of file and file system operation. Okay? So you can do that multiple times a day, and there is no issue about it. Okay, so now that it's promoted, you can go to the builds, and you will see in the list of builds there should be now on the release status. Here you can see that this build was released. Okay, and so we keep the release status and the release flow of those different builds. And now you can have different sources inside your different Ruby build. So, by the way, we use that locally for our Chef. Okay, so we do all the automated deployment inside SaaS with Chef. Okay, so we have a Chef server, and we have a lot of RubyGems that we do for all the cloud integration and the cloud interaction. Okay, and so we use this to do the promotion of whatever RubyGems we created, from the staging environment to the pre-prod environment to the prod environment. And every time you do that inside Artifactory, Artifactory is recalculating the metadata environment. One thing about the metadata of Ruby, which I really, really like, and we start to use it for a lot of the work we do now, is that the Ruby guys, they really trust versioning, okay? Basically by not putting any version. They said, I'm in a Ruby 1.8, whatever, I want to depend on this module. They just name the module by name, okay? It's quite rare that in a gem spec and in a gem environment, people are saying, I want only this version of these specific modules, okay? So they trust each other, and they have this dynamic flow of always taking the latest version of whatever RubyGems is valid for their platform, okay? That makes a very, very dynamic environment which I really think we are missing a lot in the Java environment. Okay? If you see all the downloads of log4j version 1.4, every single minor version with all the bugs, all of them are downloaded all the time. Okay? Once you find a 1.4.10 that works for you, you never change it. Okay? And it's making a mess for the log4j developers. They have critical issue and they have things that they want you to update and to upgrade. Okay? So there is a part here about the gem and the Ruby build and environment, which is highly regrettable from our side that we didn't take.
It seems that the bundler process in Ruby is just such a superior method for being able to do the transitive dependency management.
Yeah, it has some really good feature. It has some limitation. It doesn't do transitive dependency correctly for a lot of.
It doesn't do it completely. It does it mostly.
Yeah. And, but he has some really nice way of fixing when he's creating this file, which allow you to say, this is the resolution that I did, and you are capable of freezing it for going to production. So when you rebuild, the bundler doesn't have to re-execute. So it has some really good, the bundler is, and the way the API is communicating with Artifactory. So we start to use, by the way, some of this system inside Artifactory itself. Instead of a Maven build to Artifactory for a single build, sometimes it can be thousands of stupid requests to Artifactory. Okay, the bundler is way more efficient for that, and it's doing, and we re-implemented the bundler API and the full bundler stuff inside Artifactory today, and we are really happy about the communication and the speed. So yeah, there is some really good.
It seems that you Java folks learn a lot from.
Yeah, we do. We do. For us and for just wait and see what's going. Okay. Okay, let's go back. No, it's not this one. This one. Where I was. Yes. Okay. So. Central Intelligence Agency. What we talk is continuous integration and automation. I don't know where they choose this thing. So, one thing that we truly believe, by the way, between all those systems, okay, is that the single source of truth, okay, is actually Jenkins, is actually the build server, okay? And we really believe that what is the place that you need to capture, that you need to go back to whenever you have a problem and whenever you have something in production, is that you need to be able to go to the Jenkins build of anything that is running, even in production, in test, or in pre-prod, or whatever, okay? Because this is where stuff were created. This is where the action is, okay? So what do I care? The first thing is traceability. So what we did, and this is why we developed it, it's about 2 years now, 2 years and a half, is anything that is running anywhere inside your system in production, pre-prod, test environment, you have a binary file that is out there. You take the checksum of this binary file, you go back to Artifactory, you look for it inside Artifactory by a checksum search, you know exactly where it comes from, okay? So this is the goal. There is no file out there that you don't know where it comes from. If you don't know where it comes from, if it's not inside Artifactory, it means that one developer tricked it, compiled it locally on this machine and put it in production, okay? So a big security. So for very good, easy traceability, if you can tag everything, basically, that goes inside production, you can go and do quest for traceability. It's a bit making. So, this is the main issue. Rebuild from sources, from my sources, okay? There is a big movement, especially in, from the Google guys, okay? The guy in Google, they have this mechanism in Google of this big repository, and every piece of the repository and every element of the repository can be rebuilt in time from any tag and from any version, fully exact. Okay, so they have full build reproducibility all the time. It's extremely expensive. Okay, and more and more companies today are dropping the enormous amount of energy that you have to put to make sure that whenever you retake a piece of source code in any machine with a good parameter, you are recreating the exact same thing. There is so many variables that are coming inside the system. So you do as much as you can. Okay, don't be crazy and have every time you run your build, you re-get the internet and get a new version of whatever. But there is always variable JDK version, Ruby version. So in Ruby, for example, they don't care about this kind of stuff. They do bundler quite often and all this kind of stuff. So for me, to avoid this and to stop being crazy about build reproducibility and making sure that you can reproduce the build all the time, when it's possible, sometimes it's not possible. Okay. When it's possible, it really helps having an agile platform and distributing your binaries a lot faster. And this is why having Artifactory after, once you have a binary that was built correctly, that you know how it was built, you know where it came from, you have all the information about it. Okay? And you can manipulate this build and go through the workflow to go all the way to production. It's the good way to go. Don't rebuild for unnecessary just to make a release. You're supposed to take the exact same tag with the exact same version, make a release. It's a rebuild that is unnecessary. You already created this binary. Okay. So check out the branch, rebuild, done. Okay? So basically, yeah, this won't work. This is very time consuming and this is quite unstable. Okay? One of the main reasons, yeah, it's the dependency and dependency manager are a lot of time lying. So like I said, Bundler is quite good at that because he knows, once he did it, he knows how to dump his resolution results into a file and reuse it. Okay? So we can do better. This is what I was just saying. We really used the best out there. Python also is not that bad. They worked a lot on the dist and all these kind of things. So basically, we work a lot on the single source of truth inside the application server, but we work a lot also on making the dependency management a lot better. So here, this is the next step for the Ruby and the Ruby environment. We don't have it also for Windows and for .NET environment. For Gradle, Ivy, Maven, and the generic, we can capture everything that came in before you do your build and everything that came out into a single block. Okay, it's a single JSON object that lists all the binary files that you got before your build, depending on their scope, and all the binary files that were created by this specific build. Okay? And by having this single source truth of what really happened during your build inside Artifactory, allow you to manage those builds and all the dependency of those builds in a very reliable way. Okay? In the Ruby environment, we still don't have a bundler injector to be able to list whatever bundle did as a resolution and whatever the gem did when he created himself, so that this information will go back to Artifactory. Okay? The JSON object that you just saw, in terms of dependency, was empty. Okay, there was just the results of the gems that are resulting. We still don't have, for the Ruby, the capture of the dependency resolution that was done during a bundler execution. So this is the next step, and basically, this is what we allow us to go binary plus the build info to go basically all the way to production. So this is the way we see it. Artifactory, go to RubyGems, get all the artifacts, the developer works against it, they put in the version control any kind of new version dependencies or new build. Jenkins wake up, execute the build and the Ruby build. It's, of course, fetch the dependencies from Artifactory and then publish the dependencies with all this information and all the information about what was resolved and what was produced back into Artifactory. And so you can do now inside Artifactory promotion, and for example, promotion to bin tray or promotion to whatever. I think I finished. So thank you for being here. If you have any questions.